So with that said, there was a sequel made, Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. Now, what is Lunar 2 Eternal Blue? Lunar 2 Eternal Blue is a story, if I'm not mistaken, it takes place 1,000 years after what is it? It takes 30 it's I'm sorry, it's 1,000 years after the events of Lunar. So this is the same world. Some of the places in that world still exist, and funny enough, they exist in the same condition they were practically left in. And it follows the character Hiro. And really, this came out on Sega Saturn and was remade as well. So this one, it wasn't remade as much, but it was remade for the most part in moderate places and whatnot. And that Lunar is, under attack by this, this evil god who's threatening to come back. And his name is Zophar. So if you ever wonder about that website, www.zopharsdomain.com, yeah, that's, I think, where he got it from. Really, what it is the main character is Hiro, and the other one is Lucia. And her task in the game is she's supposed to revive life on the Blue Star, and she's sent, by the powers that be to stop Zophar from destroying life on Lunar and everywhere else. And so in her world, incapable of doing this. So they refer to the destroyer. It's that kind of a story. And it has a wonderful, colorful cast. In a similar light as the original Lunar Silver Star story. And it has a really good, where Zophar is the main, Galleon's the main villain in the first one. Zophar is technically the main one in this one. In Lunar 2 Eternal Blue, there is a lot of good connections to Lunar. And I'm not going to ruin it for you, but there is a character from Lunar who literally busts an Orin, in a sense. And, even though he died in the first game, and I'm not telling you who it is, and I'm sure somebody in the chat box is going to say who it is and fucking ruin it for people who haven't played it. He comes back and it just drags and pushes that game even to the next level, in a sense. And really, the story is just really good. Is it as good as Lunar, the first Lunar Silver Star story? No, it's not. Where Lunar was really, really, really well paced, Lunar 2 Eternal Blue has a couple of gaps in the game where you're sitting there for a couple of stretches of the game going, there's not much going on, really. And there's a few plot holes in it that are pretty big, but not game-breaking like in Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy X-2. Whoa. But it's not a problem, and it's easily ignored for the most part because it's still a pretty solid game. It's a good game, and it was made by the same people. It was done by the same groups of people, and honestly, it's if you want to give Lunar the Silver Star story complete a 9 out of 10, Lunar 2 Eternal Blue is like an 8 or an 8.2. It didn't quite do a lot of the good story. The story was good, but it wasn't near the same level of completeness or convincing me that it is a seamless storyline from beginning to end. And so, as much as I liked the original Lunar, the Silver Star story, I do like Lunar 2 Eternal Blue just as much. If you love the first Lunar, you're gonna like the second one. You're also going to feel the same thing as I do. You're going to feel some weaknesses here and there, but you're going to feel that there's just something about it that's not quite there. Like I said, where Lunar the Silver Star story is like a 9.0 on my grade of how good of a game it is. Lunar 2 Eternal Blue is like an 8.5 or an 8. For those kind of things where you do feel it kind of drudge on, or there's the characters are not, I think, as strong as the characters from the first game in some respects, and same with the villains. The villains are not nearly as convincing. But what was interesting was they got a lot of the original voice cast from the first game, who was brought into the second game. they actually reused a lot of people. So, like, if you heard Tempest's voice in Lunar, the Silver Star Story, I believe it was the same guy. Chad Letts, I think was the name, was the guy who did it in Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. And obviously, any repeating characters from the first game were brought, same voice actors were brought back for the second game. I'm not going to ruin who it is, because if I say who it is, it ruins some of the story. So, anyway, now the other thing, too, is that the game came in the same packaging as Lunar, the Silver Star Story. It came with a leather-bound book. It actually came with more shit this time. It came with it was, I think, 3 discs long. The game itself was 3 PlayStation discs long, and it came with an audio CD. It didn't come with a making of, I don't think. And if it, wait a minute, no, did it? I don't remember. I don't think it did. I think it was, no, it could have been 5 discs. I could just walk across the room and look. Give me 1 second. I'll tell you right now. It's got to be... Let me see here. I got the cart case right here. Let me see. It's 3 discs. It's only 3 discs. See, disc 1, disc 2, disc 3. Wait a minute. Hold on. There's a 4th disc in here. The thing lies. So it's the game itself is 3 discs long, and it comes with Lunar 2 Eternal Blue Complete, the making of. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Here's the sleeve thing for it right next to it. Okay. Hold on. So it comes with an audio disc, okay, and a promotional disc. So it's a 6 disc set from beginning to end. It's not just the 3 game discs. It comes with a making of disc, which is why I remember that voice actor specifically. And yeah, there it is. It takes 2 blocks. Kind of horse shit is this? So I don't remember that. So anyway, so that's Lunar 2 in a nutshell. And here's what it came with, and I keep that stuff over on this wall. This is the shit that came with it. Okay. It came with all kinds of bullshit, which is fine. I don't mind it. It came with similar stuff as the first Lunar. The manual is leather bound. Okay? It comes with a poster made out of cloth. I think it's like a microfiber or silk or something. I can't tell. It's so old and rickety. It comes with these caricatures that are just little face portraits, and they stand up, so they're like little chess pieces almost, and they just stand up on their thing. It came with Lucia's amulet. Yeah, this thing's like heavy. It's like brass. It's made out of solid brass, I think. And it came with that, and it also came, because I pre-ordered it. Now, you had to do a special pre-order thing. I love the first Lunar so much. When I heard Working Designs was coming out with Lunar 2 Eternal Blue, jettisoned from my asshole, and I literally flew like 6 feet in the air, and I was like, I gotta get it. And it came out, I want to say, around my birthday, or something like that. I want to say it came out, oh geez, when did it come out? It came out, it came out in December, and that's all I remember. It came out right before my birthday, and I pre-ordered it. And with the pre-order, I got the goofiest fucking thing I'd ever seen. But I love it. It sits on my wall. I love it. I love it to death. It's like a little punching puppet of the character Galleon from Lunar, the Silver Star Story. And he's just like a little, little boxer version of that doll. And I just laughed so hard when that thing came in the box, because I didn't read the pre-order thing carefully enough, and found out that it came with that if you pre-ordered. And I have the Galleon punching doll, and I was so stoked that I had it. I was like, yeah. I showed it to my friends. I showed the game to my friends. I showed all the stuff that came with it, and they're like, I've never played a Lunar game. You're a fucking nerd. And I felt bad. I felt so sad. So anyway, so these are the 2 games of the majority of the focus of the series. Okay, if you're looking at it from a chronological standpoint, you have Lunar the Silver Star Story, you have Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. But there was another game, and this game was remade as well. Lunar Walking School, I believe is what it was called. And I played this game because it's been translated, but that's not the version I played. I actually played Magic School Lunar, which was the re-release on the Sega Saturn of the same game, and they changed a lot of stuff because I heard there were a lot of problems with Walking School. And what it was, and the Japanese names, fuck, who cares what the Japanese names are? I can't pronounce them to save my life. So... And really, that's what they are, translated almost straightforward in a sense anyway. So what these games were in a sense, they took place, I want to say 1,000 years before Lunar, the Silver Star Story. and they're kind of dull. They're not very good. All I remember was the battle system was kind of, you didn't see monsters on the overworld, that you just got into random battles. The walking mechanic between fighting was taken out, so you just walk, no matter how far the enemy was, you'll walk all the way up there. And there was a lot of fighting in it. And it was also not retranslated. Obviously, it was never, it was fan translated. And so it missed the charm of the Working Designs dialogue. And it was also like Shining Force Gaiden games and Shining Force CD, it was done in chapters. So I wasn't too keen on it. It wasn't very good. Which starts becoming a staple of the Lunar series after this. Because Lunar and Lunar 2 were really, really good games. And so when Lunar Walking School, which came out for Game Gear in Japan, and then when it was remade in the US, I think in Japan it wasn't even that kind of battle system that they had. It was like a first-person battle. And it looked horrible. And in all fairness, Shining Force Gaiden games look so shitty on Game Gear, they got a Sega CD port that was upgraded very, very highly. And you can watch that Let's Play of Shining Force CD, which those games deserve that. And I kind of don't know if Lunar Walking School deserved it for the most part. The other thing, too, is that Lunar Walking School was very female-heavy and didn't have as many male characters in it. So some of that humor was there. It was maybe a little too girly-ish. I don't remember it being girly-ish. I only played it twice, and every time I played it, it felt like more of a chore to get through than it was to play, because the game's story was not as interesting or compelling as Lunar 2 and Eternal Blue and Lunar 1. So, and that was just the way that was. Lunar, the next Lunar that came out was Lunar Legend. And Lunar Legend is really just Lunar the Silver Star story, but it was translated differently by, I want to say it was Ubisoft who did it. And they fucked a lot of things up. They really did. They also added a lot. They changed the plot a little bit too, so a lot of things changed in that one. And all I recollect from Lunar Legend was that it was not popular. It was really not popular because of the changes they made. It kind of told the same story, but it told it from different perspectives and different scenario plot points that had changed the story a little bit. Like I said, some people liked it, a lot of us didn't. Don't fuck up a good thing. Don't try to rewrite your version of the same fucking story. Don't fuck with a good thing. That would be like the writer of Harry Potter taking the Lord of the Rings and rewriting it. You don't do that. You just don't do it. It's a bad idea. And that's literally what we got. So fair enough. We'll move on from that one. But that's one of the Lunar remakes. Another game that came out there, goes under two names. The one I remember is Lunar Dragon Song, because that came out in the U.S. But Lunar Genesis is the actual original name for it. And Lunar Genesis takes place way before the first Lunar. It's again another 1,000 years before the Lunar Silver Star Story game. And it's supposed to be like the very first. It's like Origins. Well, Genesis. That's would have been a better name than Dragon Song, because it makes sense. It's Genesis. And really, it talks about the Vile. It has to do with the Vile tribe and how the Vile tribe was overrunning the main world of Lunar, and where the kind of hatred for the Vile tribe came from, and what drove the Vile tribe to be evil. It's more of that backstory. Now, I will tell you this: it's a shitty fuck game. It's the worst game of the series by far. It is the worst one of the series. And yeah, nope. It's not worth the money. The battle system is it's not even that the story's that bad. The story's not very good. It's not very dramatic. It's very monochromatic. What monochrome means is that it's very monochrome is like one color, and usually gray. Like Sands of Destruction, for the Nintendo DS had more personality to it than this game. And the game mechanics were broken as fuck. It was bad. Oh, do you want XP or do you want gold? Go fuck yourself. You get one or the other. Wait, what? And I lose health for running on the overworld map, and I don't have lots of money to it was bad. It was pretty bad. And though there's some story discussions, I think there's some people on YouTube who have generously just played the storyline bits, or you can read about it, and that'll give you the origins, and that's all you need to be happy. But to see that game does complete the arc in a way. It explains the Vile Tribe a lot better, and it more importantly explains the Beastmen. And some of you might be going, what? There's Beastmen in the Lunar games? Yeah, Meldial Kirk is actually a Beastman, and so is his daughter Jessica. Kyle's not a Beastman, so does that mean Kyle's into bestiality? Da 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 da. So that's where that joke I made up stems from. So anyway, so that's Lunar Genesis in a nutshell. You can easily look over it. If you have to play it, I'm obviously not condoning getting a ROM, but they are out there. It's not a very good game. And I think the other thing that bugged me a lot was I want to, and correct me if you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. All of my RPG Guide talks are off the top of my head. No wikis open, no nothing. So this is just for my knowledge. I think it said in the advertising or on the front of the box, and I actually have the box over there. I can just look. But it said, from the original creators of Lunar the Silver Star story, or Lunar the Silver Star. And I called total bullshit, because I didn't see anybody in the credits that I directly recognized. And it wasn't even made by Game Arts. It was made by Ubisoft? It was made by somebody. But it wasn't, I know it wasn't made by Game Arts. And it was just not very good. Yeah, it had to have been Ubisoft. They were the only ones dealing with the Lunar franchise at the time, since they made Lunar Legend. And yeah, it was absolute shit, and I wasn't too happy about it. So, but this isn't the last we hear of the Lunar series. No. So where else do we hear of Lunar? Well, Lunar comes up with another remake for the PlayStation Portable in 2010, I think, 2009, 2010. And it was called Lunar Silver Star Harmony. And so when I heard that it was coming out, I was a little confused at the time. I was like, oh, so this is a new Lunar game? Is it a new game? Is it a remake of the first one again? You know, and I already heard about the PlayStation 2 Japanese combo pack. So I was kind of like, well, that's another re-release, or what are you actually giving us? And what I found out was, and I didn't buy it. My friend bought it because I don't own I have a PSP, but I don't own a lot of games for it because I don't really play a lot of games on mobile that much other than Nintendo DS games. But it was Lunar Silver Star Harmony, was literally just an enhanced remake of like Lunar the Silver Star Story Complete. It had better overworld graphics. I think it used the same animated cutscenes from Lunar Silver Star Story Complete. And you know, it was funny because my friend got it and he never played a Lunar game until this point. He heard a lot about it. Oh, I've heard so much about it. And he played through it and he's like, you know what? It's corny as fuck, but there's something. He looks at me, and this is a guy who is a molecular biologist or scientist. He's very intellectual. He loves how serious and dark Final Fantasy Tactics was. So this game was definitely not a game that, you know, he would probably like out. He doesn't like corniness. Like when he played Grandia, he loved it, but he always complained about how corny it was in the beginning. And so this game was obviously very corny throughout. And he comes up to me and he goes, you know, it was incredibly corny, but I like it a lot. I like it because it's a good story. And that was the last time I ever heard about it. I saw him play it a few times, so I noticed the visual differences. Oh, that's cool, but it wasn't worth for me to go buy it again because I already had a couple versions of it already. But it was good. It was good. And then another version came out for Apple. And I don't remember too much about it. It came out the same year. No, it came out 2 years later. Um, and it was Lunar the Silver Star Story remade again for, I think, Apple iPhone, I think. And so there's, and it's not been improved upon since, I want to say, um, Silver Star Harmony. So it's not been really upgraded. And I don't even think it's Harmony. I even think it's more of a remake of Lunar Silver Star Story, of just Lunar the Silver Star, just with enhanced graphics, kind of like what they used for the PlayStation version. It's hard to say and whatnot. Now, are they making new Lunar games? Is there ever going to be a Lunar 3? These are always questions that people talk about and whatnot, and I guarantee you there's never going to be a new Lunar game. The original creators, I don't even know what they're doing anymore. They're definitely not doing much towards redoing this game. Game Arts is not really hyper focused on making a new Lunar game. So there's never been any official release of them doing this. So what is Game Arts working on now is probably the best question. Well, here's a few things to think about. Game Arts did did Super Smash Bros. Brawl for Nintendo Wii. It was co-developed they were one of the co-developers. So if you're interested in them, you know that. They did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, I think, for Wii, I think. And that's really all they've been up to be honest with you. They're not doing all that much other than working with Xseed. And I hate to say it, guys, Xseed is kind of like Fresh kind of was to me. Xseed is a place where games kind of go to die. Their RPG games kind of go to die. As far as what's coming out with Lunar and whatnot, there's not going to be much coming out of anything interesting. Okay, so I am sorry to say, I know there was a huge article in the late 90s. The guy who was in charge of working designs, his name was Victor Ireland, and many people in the game industry who followed the game industry knew this guy. This dude is a total douchebag. I'm sorry, he really is. I've heard him in real life, and you can actually read some of his interviews on LunarNet. And he was telling people how there was going to be a Lunar 3. It was like a big stink. He made a big stink about it and said, "Oh yeah, there's one in development." Da 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 da. There wasn't. There was never one in development. Game Arts condemned him for making that statement because how would a guy from Working Designs really know if? I guess they would know, but why would you announce that before the studio fucking announced it? Okay, so I think it was very silly, and obviously Victor Ireland's the same guy who sold Working Designs. He sold Working Designs in the late 90s, and that's kind of the last we ever heard of there ever being a possibility for a sequel. And in turn, it was for the best, because really, Lunar and Lunar 2 were amazing games. They were remade. Lunar 2 was remade as many times as Final Fantasy IV was in the grand scheme of things, and the first Lunar was the most remade RPG game of all time. And I'll stand by that until somebody can physically prove me wrong, but it was one of the most remade RPG games of all time. Even over some of the Zelda games, which, as I've said in other talks, is not a RPG game, it's an adventure game. But, and again, one of the reasons it's been remade so many times is that it's a solid story. It's an amazing story. And it was just wonderful and amazing and great, and it does everything that it sets out to do well. And one could say, did it do it better than maybe Ingrandia? That's more up for debate. But I shit you not that the characters in Lunar are better than any Final Fantasy character. By far. And I can say that with confidence with a lot of the Grandia 1 and 2 characters. One thing that Game Arts did really, really well, and they're the same people who made Grandia, surprisingly, and a lot of other Game Arts RPGs you can make these statements about them and not feel like a complete jackass. Game Arts, what they did really, 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 really well is they were really good at making RPG games and making games with interesting characters. Now, what does this mean? When they went out to make an RPG game, they made sure that they had good development, that everything was done to a very high standard as far as storyline goes. Now, this isn't really Game Arts' doing. This is the writers that were making the game at the time, because they didn't just make RPGs. They made other games too. Like, they made a game called Sylphid that came out on Sega CD, and it was okay. It was pretty good, but so they weren't just making RPG games. They were making other stuff as well. And say what you will about it, and really the developer is Studio Alex, which is the RPG group of people. For what it's worth, they did a lot of things right. Now, the negative that I can give you is that it's very stereotypical. The games are very blunt. The stories are very blunt. There's nothing that screams great storyline directly, but that's not the thing. And really what you guys as gamers should take from this is sometimes something that's simple, something that's, dare I say it, cliche, if it's done really, really well with lots of care and lots of thought put into it, and it's done, and you put a standard in the story that you're trying to tell, and you make that standard ridiculously high. Not ridiculously high, but you care about every single detail of your game. You'll make a great game. Your stories do not have to be intricate. It doesn't have to be a twist ending. It doesn't have to have anything mind-blowingly cerebral in it to be a good game. We see these kinds of things in stories, and they're not that good when they're done. Sometimes you get lucky with, like, Parasite Eve, which wasn't even an original story. It was based off of a book written by a Japanese man, and the book's not bad. I've read it twice. It's actually pretty good. But it was based off of a book before it was based off a fucking game. And then that was very original to some extent. It was very good. It was a little cerebral in what it was trying to accomplish. And very, well played out and thought. But then you had, like, Parasite Eve 2, and then you had, what was it, The 13th Day? Which was another sequel. And both of those games, the Parasite Eve 2 was crap, and so was the third game. I think it was the 13th birthday or the 13th day. I played it. It sucked. I wasn't happy about it. It's one of the few games I actually own on my PSP, and it was crap. In comparison to what they had done before. Now, with anything, there's a lot of things you have to keep in mind when we talk about Game Arts. Now, what games have they really done? They haven't done a lot. Okay, and I will stand by that. They haven't really done a lot. Most of their games were Lunar games. Most of them were we're not going to get into that. So I'm not going to get into all that stuff. That's not really what this video is about. We're talking about Lunar. I shouldn't talk about Game Arts. I mean, that could be its own thing. But, the writing was amazing. And we saw this writing stay clear because Game Arts literally produced all the Grandia games. And they also produced all of the Lunar games. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and before somebody gives me shit for this, I want to say Grandia Extreme had a different writer, which is very possible. I think the writer for Grandia Extreme was very different, and I think that's why, and in turn that could be why Grandia Extreme is a very shitty game. But for the most part, what you need to know is that, if you do something simple, if you don't try to be over the top, or you don't try to be complicated in storytelling, you don't try to have these ridiculously complicated storylines, and you don't try to go for risky character depictions, you'll make an amazing RPG game. The battle system, though having a few innovations in it, wasn't very complex. Like I said, the storyline is fundamental. It's like how to write a fantasy story, fundamentals 101. And you just read through that script and that storyline. You experience that game. It's a solid story from beginning to end. And for everything that they did well, they never had to improve upon it, really. That's what's interesting. And like Lord of the Rings, and like a lot of the famous fantasy books, it'll continue to keep being remade, I would think. And what I'd like to see... what would be the ultimate Lunar experience? That's a question I think a lot of us might have. I think the ultimate Lunar experience would be if Level 5 Studios took it and made it at the level they made Ni no Kuni. That would be an amazing experience from beginning to end, and they could probably still get the same voice cast. Though you could swap a few people out, which I would, but I'd keep people like John Truitt, who played Galleon, around, because that voice acting is his character Galleon was quite extraordinary. So, is Lunar as a franchise a good franchise? Absolutely. It had 5 games in total? Lunar 2, no, 4 games. It had 4 games. Stay away from the Game Boy Advance release, the Ubisoft release of Lunar. What was it? Lunar. Whatever it was. Stay away from the Lunar for Nintendo DS. Actually, better than that, just stay away from the Nintendo Lunars. If you want to play a good Lunar, play Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete, and Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. And if you are disappointed by Lunar, then you are not a true RPG fan. Go back to your Call of Duties. Go back to your shitty games. And don't come in here with your bullshit. They are great classics, part of anyone's collection. You should, if you don't have it, look into it, find a way to get it, find a way to enjoy it, and I guarantee you will not be disappointed. I am the RPG guy. Comment below. Let's talk more Lunar. Let's talk what we wish Lunar might become later. Keep on looking out for great RPGs. And as always, support the channels you love and you watch. And, become a follower, become a subscriber. Love to have you with us. And to get updates on more RPG Guy talks, as well as Tuesday Night Team Up and Let's Plays and everything else that's going on the channel. So anyway, again, I am the RPG Guy. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. We'll see you next time. And as always, if you're going to game hard. We'll see you next time.